community call, and what I wanted to talk about this week was, of course, welcoming everyone back, and then I wanted to show that it looks like we have quite a bit of activity that's been happening in our repo. And I guess first I should ask if anyone has anything they want to cover first. So I noticed, Andy, that there's been a lot of activity in the behavioral model group that I've been seeing fly by. And I was wondering if you wanted to talk about that at all in this call. These are the kind of things I've been seeing here.
Let's see. So, I mean, one thing that I think I told Riff about that there was a little bit of generalization of the set of P4 programs that BMV2 will accept. For example, it previously didn't allow general if statements inside of actions and just some unnatural ways of writing code that would run on there. And so last November, December, we generalized it to accept that. I don't know if Riff is immediately, I mean, that doesn't mean you need to immediately go change your code or like that. It'll work well. So anyway, he's aware of that. Riff is aware of that. There's been a few people making small enhancements to it. We just have kind of a list now, of project ideas for people who are like some people are students or hobbyists just looking for like ideas for small projects to do. So we
I noticed that. I noticed that here. This is kind of what I've been seeing come through. You know, like this support for 128, and I noticed you'd been commenting on a lot of things.
The folks at Intel, have been. I mean, I'm just reviewing it and seeing if it does what it says on the tin and pointing out cases where it doesn't quite, and they've been fixing things up. So again, still DVDK and BMV2 is still the most general, supporting most code. I've been toying with the idea of adding add-on miss and a few other things that you'd like there, but there's no set schedule for that. That's just sort of when I have hobby time for doing things like that. So
right. And I believe in the last behavioral model meeting when I was talking to Riff, and it looks like, Riff and JimmyZhai and those guys are, doing quite a lot of work. And this is not the behavioral model meeting today, but they've been doing a lot of work on that app that they're trying to develop to cover some of the gaps as well. So hopefully we'll be able to talk more about that in the next BMV2 or the next behavioral model meeting. So great. Any questions for Andy about the P4 stuff from anyone? So I'm hoping you guys can see my screen here.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. So I noticed in the repo, we got quite a few pull requests here, and what I usually do is just work it into the project here. And so it's kind of cool. GitHub has that project view, so that's what I use. And so the items that are not closed, this was the last time I didn't get the notes out, but this is what had been closed, in the last amount of time. And then what I noticed this week was JimmyZhai also merged this implement API get set attribute, and that was, a couple of weeks ago. But he's, continuing on with the refactorization of the libsci, and so working on those J2 templates. And so that was actually merged a couple of weeks ago and approved by Riff, I guess, right before the holiday. So we have that one. And then these are new. It looks like they're working on this per action parameter support here. And if one P4 table has multiple actions, the parameters have to overlap, So they're doing some sort of fix here. So if anyone's curious or wants to look at this. And then another one, Dash doesn't support, APIs for get set. So we all knew this one, like we've all known this one. So they're working on that. And please tell me if I'm going too fast or talking too much. And then we had this one here, looks like Shaofeng. So Shaofeng is from the other side of the the continent. So he works when we're in our off time. So he's doing this fix here for us to change this this action in cap U1 to the data. So those are approved. And the last one I know, so this one, the create floating NIC concept, what I was planning to do was take that talk provided by Michael Zygmunt and translate it into, Markdown, and I just haven't had time to do it. And then I know that Riff said he wanted to create a more detailed doc. So I was curious, Riff, did you want me to take the first swing at it and you can edit, or did you just want to do it on your own? Because I'm happy to make the document.
Yeah, I don't mind at all. I think the more detailed doc, like from my side, is mostly like targeting like how the dash pipeline should work, like the the modeling stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you like to take the first swing, feel free to go
Yep.
ahead. Otherwise, it's
It's just because I have the pictures and everything already drawn. Like I've drawn the pictures of the traffic patterns, and I haven't had a minute yet to do this. I do need to do this, and then maybe I could pass it over to you to take a look and do the pipeline stuff.
Yep, that sounds perfect. Yep.
Okay, good. And I don't know if everyone had a chance to listen to that one, but about 3 or 4 weeks ago, Michael Zygmunt introduced that floating NIC concept and kind of delineated how the flows would go and what was needed in each case, whether it was what redirect map or ICMP redirect or whatever it was. And so I need to go through that document again and get it ready for publication. So had you guys heard about that, honey? For I can't remember if Andy was there for that one. It was pretty good. Okay.
Yep, not aware.
Okay, it's pretty cool actually. So Riff, since you're here, in the next behavioral model meeting, do you think we would have more of an update on that app we're working on, the data plane app?
Yeah. So I think there is we just walked through one of the PRs, and then PR actually fixes some of the things. Yeah, so we can discuss that in that meeting, or both works if we want to discuss this one.
Yeah, that was supposed to be today, but I had to move the dash meeting to this slot, and I had to bump behavioral out. So maybe that might be the next one, and not next week, but the week after.
Yeah, that sounds good. We actually did the set and get support. We also did the create and remove refactoring. And then one actually fixed the the per action. Yep.
Here was the get and set right here.
Yeah.
Here's the and then here's the per action.
Parameter support, yes. And this then one is also fixed by the latest commit. With the
so these are just kind of in process then, right?
It's already checked in. Because
checked. Okay.
Yeah, it is signed off by both like Camille and me, like this Tuesday. And I didn't see any other comments, and because this week is like the new year, so I don't know how the community meeting would go. So I'm like
I'm just gonna mark it awaiting review then. Okay. And which one did you want me to merge? Oh, it's already done. Okay.
Yeah, it's already done. Yeah. It's the one like I sent you on Tuesday.
The one on Tuesday. Okay. Yeah, I'll go check this one.
Yeah.
Okay, right. And then so yeah, I've got these and
then
so
line 40, that one is also done.
What's that?
The line 40. This one is also done.
Oh, it's also done. Okay.
Yep. It's a get set attribute implement. So that one is also done.
All right, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That was a big one. Because I remember when we started the community, we didn't have the get set support. Do you remember that, Hanif?
Yeah. Took quite a few days.
Yep. Okay, great. It looks like we're making progress. So,
quite a few days to review that one. It's a huge one.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I appreciate those guys. That's awesome. So Murali, did you have anything you wanted to cover? Were we supposed to cover, I mean, it's more of a smart switch thing, but were we supposed to look at testing or PMON PRs in this call?
I think we've kind of got approvals from NVIDIA folks on that, and I think Vasundhara also. We're just waiting for Prince George to come back, and we'll work with him.
Yeah, and he's back on the 10th. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, next week probably. Yeah, then.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. Andy or Alan, is there anything you want to cover or ask for before the next call?
I think the other question was around the Dash SONiC management tests in some sense, right? The VNet and private link. So we have some open questions and we are reviewing the PRs that were published by Lawrence and others. So we will probably have some comments and maybe a discussion.
Okay.
So make some progress on that way. We'll work with Murchie also so that VNet and private link and all of that can go on the Hero test environment as well. So yeah.
Okay. And those are in the SONiC management repo, not in the Dash repo?
I think they're in the Dash repo, I believe.
Okay. All right. I'll find them.
Yeah.
I'll pull those in. Yeah. So, Andy or Alan, did you have anything you wanted to talk about before we close out today?
I don't have anything.
Thanks,
I
Alan.
had a not specifically Dash related question,
Sure.
but I was curious with folks here at Microsoft, maybe you know somebody, I mean, I know SONiC has been around for what, about 10 years now. So the early architecture of it, some of the hows and whys might be lost in the mists of time or for people that, but I was curious. So is it, I have heard recently, and sorry, I'm way behind on SONiC specific, or being working on other network operating systems so many years. But a lot of network operating systems have the property where if you add, attempt to add a policy and the hardware doesn't have, if the control software figures out, oh, the hardware doesn't have the capacity to add this many routes or this many ACLs or whatever, it, rejects it at the CLI and everything goes back to the way it was before you attempted it, and no harm done usually. Modulo bugs, but that's the intent. Is SONiC unlike that? I've heard some people claim, who may not know the full story, so I could be wrong too, that it's fairly common, let's say, for the syncd process to crash if you attempt to allocate some stuff in hardware, add some stuff to hardware, and it fails. It returns a failure. It just syncd crashes. Is that accepted or normal or odd?
Yeah, it has been the case, Andy, that what happens is, if you're familiar with the architecture, there is a module called SI, right?
Yep.
So what happens is that the SI adapters are ASIC specific adapters. So these are built by the ASIC vendors. And what happens is that, it has always been the case that if you actually made a call, to SI, and SI eventually made a call to whatever the SDK, and eventually, if that were to fail because of hardware resources that you have exhausted, then it would return an error, and syncd would have no idea how to, process that error, and it would crash. So that had always been the case. There have been some, I guess, improvements to handle those error cases, and in fact, there is a module called CRM, Critical Resource Manager, which essentially keeps track of how many resources have been allocated, and then if there is a check before you actually make a call, then you can avoid running into those kind of issues. So there have been improvements over the years, and also, but things where there are things that come from the top. Like through the configuration, that would mean that you are allocating resources as a result of some configuration, but there are resources that get allocated as a result of some traffic coming in, right? So, and then if those things are actually happening underneath the covers, and you probably are not in sync with it, then you could run into some issues. But I think by and large, what is going on is that there are certain attempts to avoid those issues where you can handle those errors gracefully. So I think that in the recent past, things have improved quite a bit. That's what I can see.
So it was kind of an original, let's say, simplification of the software architecture that people have been trying to backfill and correct slowly over time.
Yeah,
As they find out that
true.
it's like
That's
operating a big network where a switch crashes because of that seems like that would be one of your most frequent reasons for switches crashing, I would think.
yeah, that is true. But like I said, people who are hardening this thing and then doing a lot of these things internally once they get this open source and then they try to deploy it, they're handling them much more gracefully, and then community is also handling it somewhat gracefully as we're going along.
So
Especially
adding more error handling in the SI layer that handles error returns from the hardware layer.
Well,
not
what
there?
happens is that we like I said, there is a CRM part that
it tries to pre-check before it tries to add something. Will this fail?
Exactly. So
Which is kind of difficult because unless you know exactly what they're trying to add, you don't actually know if it's going to fail until they actually try.
That is true. That is true because one thing happens is that one call can actually end up allocating resources into multiple different tables, right? So then you don't also know which ASIC does what, right? So because the code at the I should say org agent level or CRM checking level and so forth is totally ASIC agnostic. So it doesn't know what to check, how many things to check. But if you are basically keeping something at a very generic level in the CRM, then you can do certain pre-flight checking, and then you can do something at that level. But other than that, it had been pretty difficult.
Okay.
To address that. Yeah.
I understand it simplifies hardware dramatically. It just seems like a fragile way to operate a big network.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. You are absolutely right. I think.
I mean, I guess what people have done before then is basically just stay far away from the limits and you're fine.
Yeah.
Did you?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Andy, yeah, another thing, so in my naive understanding, and another thing about the the side crush is that there are two type of the problems that you usually will hit. The first one is the resources, just like Mohammed just mentioned. For the resource one, the thing is that those numbers are usually like monitored. Like in the production, we usually like monitor those numbers, and we actually can alert before those numbers even gets close. So because we don't want those numbers running at high. So
basically you try to say, oh, number of routes is 80% nominally full. We should start doing things now to reduce stop adding routes.
Exactly. Instead of like really hitting the failure. Instead of hitting the failure, we should say, oh, it's already like close to 70% or 80%. It's not good. It's definitely something wrong. We should not do that, and we should like change the designs or whatever. Just like do the things like beforehand instead of actually hitting the failure. This is why I guess
is that monitoring going to human operators, or is it going to some automatic software that tries to relegate?
Yeah, it's automatic. Because the CRM gets pulled, so those goes through the telemetry pipeline, and then we can fire alerts based on that. So it's fairly straightforward.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense to stay away from limits, even if you don't crash when you hit the limits.
Yes, exactly.
Because then you get cases where you've tried to add a route and it failed, and what do you do then?
Yeah, exactly. Because in that case, if you say if you run add a route and you fail, you never know what you're gonna do. Because even though your switch doesn't crash, the packet will still get lost. Next hop is the same thing. So you don't want to hit those conditions. So it's so that's why it's like maybe that part is a little bit loose, because in the actual use case, at least in my understanding, is that it will be nice to avoid actually running into that situation. So that's the first thing for the resource usage. The other side is the other kind of side failures is usually like we add something. Let's say we create a buffer profile, or create some kind of object, and there's something missing or some attribute not getting right, and just don't know what to SDK doesn't know what to do and just crashes, or it fails, then it triggers a crash, triggers a side dump. So that's another type of failure, usually like invalid parameters, or it's just like invalid whatever the settings. So those things is then it basically is the same thing, is essentially what we don't really know what we're gonna do when running into that kind of failure. We can say, okay, let's not crash, but on the other hand is then those things should be checked beforehand, or if something is not supported, those things are handled by capability queries. So what SONiC does is it usually queries certain attributes to say, hey, do you actually support those attributes? Do you actually support those enum for these attributes? And the SDK will actually return, says, and yeah, we support this and that, or this counter and that counter, and depends on what gets returned, we call the API in a different way. So that avoids those things. So it's more like a preventive way instead of like try and error. So I think that's what behind it.
So yeah, and then those basically the capabilities, right? I mean, you really do a check to make sure that those ASICs have certain capabilities that they support, or even ASIC has it, but the SI also has support, that SI adapter has support for it or not, and that way you can avoid making a call and then getting an error and not be able to really handle that error and crash, right? So those are really checks that you do within at the higher level, which is ASIC agnostic, or to ensure that, okay, before you even make the call to take care of any operation, you want to make sure that that operation is supported underneath, right?
Sure. So does Dash add new CRM capacity measurements to help stay away from resource limits on like policies? Because these policies are pretty big.
I thought I saw a Dash CRM as I was cruising through here. I can check.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah. Did we need to file an issue or anything, Andy?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm asking, like, I'm still fairly new to SONiC despite having shown up to many of these meetings, and I just thought I would ask and see if there are any experts on knowing what the history of common practices. So I appreciate all that education there.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me ask a silly question. Do we have stats on what's caused the networks to crash? And if it turns out that 80% of the crashes are because somebody puts in a configuration that isn't supported and everything gets messed up at that point, that sounds like that would be something worth prioritizing on the, let's make sure that this doesn't happen, right? If it turns out that, that's only 2% and really networks get taken down for X, Y, Z. So do we have any of that kind of data?
From the SONiC perspective, I don't know. I'm not the SONiC PM. Do you mean internally at Azure, or like across all the people, all the companies that use SONiC?
Anywhere we can get it, right? And say, okay, for Azure, it turns out misconfigurations are, I'm totally making this stuff up, right? Are 5%, right? At Cisco, it turns out that, across all of their deployments, it's, 17%. I don't know, right? But that would help us frame Andy's concern, because I'm total agreement, right? Geez, I dumped something into a command line. There ought to be enough smarts to say, yeah, we really can't do that. right? As opposed to network down, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I think for me, just because I'm not certain, I would maybe file an issue in the SONiC repo to ask and get some, because they do cover those, you know, and assign them to people, or someone will contribute or communicate, because I honestly don't know.
I
Would
have
that be?
I have a vague memory that Google might have published a research paper or two in the past 5 years on whatever experience they had at that point they published,
Uh-huh.
but I can't point at a paper right now.
Okay. And I remember the last thing I was looking at, I guess I didn't have it in the right folder, Andy. But this is what I was talking about with the PRs that I've been kind of watching come through, you know, for the behavioral model. Just, you know, Rupesh.
Yep.
What's that? Yeah. Yeah. So seems like some work's going on there.
Yep. That's Rupesh's kind of he was participating in Google Summer of Code last summer and work there, and he's been continuing it somewhat.
That's awesome.
So he's a
Awesome.
student.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome.
It's still mostly volunteers, a handful of volunteers, but Cisco, let's see, Cisco is planning to start, join the P4 consortium as a paid member, and so I'll be asking questions about they've already been looking at ideas of trying to maybe pay one or two people to do some sort of helps with software maintenance. So we'll see.
Okay.
No promises or timelines, but definitely interested in at least things like CI, CD, GitHub Actions, workflow stuff is kind of eats away a lot of time from other volunteers.
Yeah. Well, I should tell you, I received the video back from the Cisco live recording I did with Sony Giandri and Kevin Wallenweber. And I'm not sure if I'll publish it or anything. I kind of looked like a goofball, but it's a pretty good video though, about, you know, disaggregation and where we're going with hardware and things like that. I'm not the most photogenic, so I'm a little hesitant to share it.
That's good. I mean, post it on your LinkedIn.
Yeah, but then everyone will, you know, look at my weird face on the video. But yeah.
No. Say more information and sharing thoughts important.
Yeah, totally. Okay, well, thanks everyone. I appreciate. Oh, and I'm still working on switching the list over to the Linux Foundation list. I haven't done that yet because I actually have a lot of people I need to transfer over. So I'm working on that too. But thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.